Hello and welcome to another Record Sport Facebook Live. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sport's Gavin Berry and Will Lancaster. Guys, how are you both?
I'm brilliant, mate. Thanks for asking.
Good, Daniel. Thank you.
Wonderful to be joined by you both. Will we chat after another frantic week of Premiership action? Gav, I think the best place to start, a lot of rumours at the moment about Ange Postecoglou and the vacant Leeds United job.
Yeah.
Is it something you could be tempted by?
To be honest, no, I don't think so. I mean, all the sort of noise. Look, let's be honest, Daniel. I don't think anything would ever surprise you in football, would there? I mean, Brendan Rodgers' departure came as out of the blue, and with Steven Gerrard at Rangers, you think they're settled, and then, so we know from experience that nothing should surprise you, but you do get the feeling with Ange Postecoglou that he's honest when he says he's happy. He's had one crack at the Champions League. I think he would definitely want that second crack at it. I'm looking down the odds just now. What is his fifth favourite? I'm not surprised at that. I think actually it should be higher in the odds because you look at the job that he's done at Celtic. I mean, why would they not be interested? Why would they not be interested in him? But I just don't think at this stage it would tempt him. If he went now, you look at where they are on the table, he goes now and they get relegated and you're in the Championship. I don't think this is the time to take it. I think he stays on at Celtic at least until next season, has another crack at the Champions League, enhances his reputation even further, and then when a job comes, he goes for it then.
Mm-hmm. And well, Gav's right. Like, I remember when the rumours about Brendan Rodgers started, I thought there's no way he'd leave Celtic for Leicester, and then he did. Nothing can surprise you, but I would be shocked if Leeds United managed to tempt Ange away.
Yeah, I'd be shocked as well. Obviously, the key thing for me is he's built a clean slate. He came in, did an entire rebuild last summer with 15, 16 players coming in. He likes to get his business done early. He's just signed 4 players earlier on the January transfer window, didn't panic with any late decisions. That club is now, it's gone away from like the Rodgers and the Lennon era of like the old guard. He's shipped all them out and he's brought in just a team for himself. So on the contrary, Michael Beale did that when he left QPR. He said, I'm not going to jump ship. So like you say, you do never know. I'd be really surprised. Another thing for me as well is Jesse Marsch has brought in all these Salzburg, Leipzig, the Red Bull style of play. And you've got Ralph Hasenhüttl, who's at Southampton, waiting in the wings. He's got no club. He could be like a perfect ready-made replacement for Jesse Marsch. You've got Carlos Corberán, who's doing really well at West Brom in the Championship. Even Marcelo Bielsa has been linked with a return back. So I think Ange would be a brilliant sort of appointment, but like I say, just maybe not right at this time.
Mm-hmm. On the pitch, Gav, Celtic are in pretty imperious form. There's not many downsides at the moment. One player that might be a bit of a crossroads though is David Turnbull. He scored again at the weekend.
That's right.
He definitely chips in with the goals, but he's not an automatic starter for Celtic.
Well, that's three in the last 5 and 4 from the bench. So you have to say that it's pretty impressive for him, albeit, you look at the way that Celtic play, they create so many chances, but still, you've only got that short window a lot of the time to do something, and you have to say that he's certainly taking that opportunity. 23 years old, and it just emphasises how strong this Celtic squad is. You look at the players, I mean, you've got McGregor, Hatate and Moy, all certain starters now. Even Matt O'Reilly, who had done so well, and everyone was singing his praises, he's kind of dropped down a bit. Turnbull looks to have leapfrogged him. You've got Iwata as well. So I think come the end of the season, if David Turnbull's not playing more, you would have to say that at this stage, at the age that he's at, he would maybe have to look at moving on somewhere else. I mean, there was talk of him during the January window, wasn't it, possibly going out on loan or moving on. He kind of shot that down himself, but he's not going to be content at his age. I mean, because he's been around the Scotland squad as well. I mean, he's not going to help his Scotland chances any, but it's hard to see when you look at this Celtic team and the way they're playing in the squad. It's hard to see him getting much more.
This is a bit bold, and I'll stick my neck in the line. I might get stick for this, but I think if Celtic were starting a cup final or playing Rangers tomorrow, I would have Turnbull ahead of O'Reilly at the minute. I think O'Reilly's been brilliant, but Turnbull's got an eye for goal. Also, as you say, Gav, 3 and 5. You look at 1 year left in his contract. It's a big time for him.
But would you have him ahead of Moy, Hatate, McGregor?
You reminded me of Moy.
No, having him ahead of O'Reilly's fine, but I mean O'Reilly's now dropping back onto the bench, so I mean it's getting ahead of the other three that's his problem.
That's true. That's a good point.
And Iwata.
Sounds good on paper, but like logistically throughout the whole match, you've got O'Reilly, Hatate, Moy, McGregor. They all know each other inside out, and Turnbull's come on for cameos in the last 20 minutes of matches when teams are absolutely, knackered from chasing the ball for 90 minutes and just sticking one in the bottom corner in stoppage time. I think on paper it sounds good, but logistically he's not really going to break into that mould.
I don't think Celtic fans might correct me, but I think that the three at the minute, McGregor, Hatate, and Moy, Gav, that's probably the three in form.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
No doubt about it. And I mean, Moy, just unbelievable. I mean, to think that, probably everybody, and there will be Celtic fans out there who thought at the time, they would have questioned the signing of Moy, raised eyebrows, his age, he was on a free transfer. But when you look at it now, and we should know not to question Ange Postecoglou's judgment in the transfer market. But I mean, I don't even think, there's anyone who could have thought it could have worked out that well, even ones who backed that signing. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Absolutely. And elsewhere, Kyogo continued his brilliant form against St Johnstone at the weekend. It's now 22 goals in 32 games this season for the Japan striker. That's a bit out there, but would you have him as a better player, better Celtic striker now than Edouard? I know I'm putting you in the spot, Will.
I wouldn't personally. I think Edouard just brought that extra flair, the height. He's more of a threat in the air. Just had that silkiness about him. Kyogo was much better off the shoulder, probably a better finisher. But I think in terms of consistency, Edouard, for me, this again is controversial, was better than Moussa Dembele.
Wow.
I'd probably say, yeah. I love Kyogo to bits. I think he's a class striker, by far and away better than all, if not most, in the league. But Edouard was just that different sort of level to Kyogo is for me personally.
Gav, Kyogo or Edouard, who would you go for?
I think Edouard, but I think Kyogo could surpass him.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, to be fair. Elsewhere, guys, in the Scottish Premiership, of course, one of the biggest clubs, Aberdeen, still don't have a manager, Gav. Still without a boss since Jim Goodwin's departure.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry, go on.
No, you go.
No, I was just going to say Chris Wilder's at the forefront, but...
Yes, yeah, and I think if there's a chance, I mean, Record Sport were the first to sort of to mention Chris Wilder's name, and I think if there is interest from him, I think there's no doubt when you look around at the people who have been linked with the job, I think he would be. I think what Aberdeen need. They need experience there. They need somebody, a real safe pair of hands to bring stability. Obviously, we also broke the news that Dwight York was interested in this job. There's I get it, but fans like the big name. He's obviously a legend. He had that spell managing in Australia. My concern with it would be, Aberdeen can't afford to really gamble. This is Dave Cormack's third appointment. He needs to get this one right. There's pressure on him to get it right. I think, and someone like Chris Wilder, 55, you get experience at a good level in England. And I think if he was interested, he, for me, would be the standout.
And it's no harm to Barry Robson, who's in there, but as you say, Gav, they need someone with experience.
They need experience. They need experience. Barry Robson, he obviously doesn't have the experience. He's in an interim role just now. But he's obviously, the other thing about that is that he's brought up Steve Agnew to work with him. Steve Agnew, I think I'm right in saying, worked with Chris Wilder at Middlesbrough. So they work together. So, look, Barry Robson's had a key role in and around the coaching staff for some time now. If Wilder was to come up, with Agnew, you can, Barry Robson would still have a big part to play in that setup. And I think that would be a very interesting trio.
Mm-hmm. And well, you're a Burnley fan, so you'll be familiar with it. I mean, no one's perfect, we'll let you away with it. But no, you'll be familiar with English Championship with Wilder. I think if Aberdeen could get him, it would be a bit of a coup.
Oh, absolutely. We were in the Premier League a few years before, but obviously being like a Championship, lower Prem size club, I've always kept a keen eye on the league, and they came up, I think it was 2017, 18 or 18, 19 under Wilder. And from what I can see, he works best. Obviously, he's a Sheffield United fan, so he had that unity at the time. But he works best in teams where he can feel comfortable and get into a proper situation, challenging at the top of the league. The only reason his spell at Sheffield United came to an end was because they were one of the, poorer clubs in the English Premier League, and he just didn't have the finances to compete with even teams who were like staying up by the skin of the neck, like West Ham. Look at Leeds this year, spending like 60 million, 100 million if McKennie joins. Sheffield United just didn't have that. So when the unity goes in the squad that you've built up through all that time, the magic obviously faded. But with Aberdeen, they're at least a top 5 club, top 4 club, however you view it. If he can get the resources in the Scottish Premiership and above the teams in the bottom half of the table, really collate a team that he can get working to his standards, I think Aberdeen should be really challenging Hearts for that 3rd place.
Yeah, but what do you think will? This is. I suppose this is the other key thing. If we're looking at it from his point of view, if you remember when Sean Dyche was out of work, one of your old managers, of course, who was linked with the Rangers job when that was vacant, and he did an interview, and he was effectively saying, "I still feel as if I've got another Premier League job in me." He was hanging around for the next one to come up. And he's now got the Everton job, so that was right. Do you think Wilder, is his reputation at such a level that he may also think the same, that he could get another Championship job? And do you think that would appeal more to him?
Yeah, potentially. He went to Middlesbrough and he had them in the relegation zone before he was sacked, but I think he's come out and said that it was just like a lack of unity that he had there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much control he was given, but I think I'd agree with the fact that if he went to Aberdeen, it would raise my eyebrows at least. Obviously, there would be more around the country. Premier League's out of the window for him. I think with Dyche, the thing was he was at Burnley for 9 years, so he left before we even got relegated at the end of last season.
Yeah.
Kept us up on a shoestring budget into Europe, so that's why he sort of would have distanced himself from the Rangers job. But Wilder was on, I think it was 14 points with Sheffield United after 28 games in the season that Sheffield United went down, took some time out, went to Middlesbrough, was in the relegation zone there. So you wonder if he's, with all due respect to Aberdeen, a big club, sort of go down a step, build his confidence, do well at Aberdeen, and then if a top-end Championship team like a Norwich or something like that come in for him, then might jump ship in that case.
Yeah. That's the thing. I suppose it's how he views it. Does he think he needs the Aberdeen job, or does he think he's got enough credit, with clubs, chairman in the Championship to think, well, somebody will take a chance on it. It depends how much he sees his reputation has been damaged, and whether he thinks, oh, I'll need the Aberdeen job.
Well, he seems there was earlier in his career. I think he went from Oxford to Northampton, or vice versa. And he went from League One to League Two, and I think he was top of the league with one of the teams, and everyone was like, "What on earth is he doing?" Brought them up. That increased his reputation. He got the Sheffield United job, and then he went from League One to the Premier League. So he's not adverse to taking a step back if that's how he views it. So it's something to consider.
And sometimes people just fancy a change of scenery. I mean, say when you've been around, he's 55 and he's been around, various leagues down there and various clubs, playing and managing. So, sometimes it might just appeal. Just go try something
European football as well. If he finishes in the top 5 and you're expecting, the old firm to win the 2 cups or a Hearts.
Yeah.
It's a chance for him to have European football. He's never had that. The only chance he had was with Sheffield United, and as you know, breaking into the top 7 of the Premier League is a really hard task. So it's another avenue for him to explore, and playing at Ibrox and Celtic Park, the biggest stadiums than anything you've got in the Championship, and he's not getting a Prem job anytime soon. So it's not a bad move for him as such. It's just some people might view it as a bit of a one step back, two step forwards.
Yeah.
And Gav, just before we move on from Aberdeen, Livingston fans won't thank me for saying it, but David Martindale, he's someone that I would definitely consider if I was Dave Cormack.
Yeah, listen, on paper, yes, but I think David Martindale said it himself, and it's a shame that maybe his background goes against him. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's admitted it himself, but if you were just looking purely on the job, we spoke a bit earlier before we come on air. I think I had mentioned Stephen Robinson one point when we were asked a question. Stephen Robinson, yes, I think probably what goes against him is that Aberdeen went to St Mirren for their last manager and it never worked out too well. So I think maybe he'll suffer from that, saying we can't go back to Paisley again, like how it worked out last time. But again, you look at what he did, at Motherwell for a spell, and now what he's doing at St Mirren, quite an unbelievable job. And listen, it would be unfair not to go from purely because he's working for St Mirren and what happened, because it doesn't mean the same thing is going to happen again. We're talking about two totally different people. But yeah, if you were looking around in the Premiership, obviously Robbie Nielsen's not going to be going anywhere. Then you would have to see David Martindale and Stephen Robinson would be the two standouts.
Mm-hmm. And elsewhere, Gav, we talked about Celtic, but we didn't mention Rangers. Obviously, Michael Beale at the weekend, Rangers managed to see off Ross County. It wasn't the prettiest of displays, but 11 wins in 12 now, still unbeaten. It's a pretty impressive start.
He could not have really done any better, apart from winning the Old Firm game on January the 2nd. But even then, and he was so close. But it's been pretty much flawless. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think many people could have predicted that it would have gone as well as it has. It's quite phenomenal. They played so well against Hearts in midweek. That was the best performance under Michael Beale. And I think that was a frustration on Saturday, probably for a lot of the fans, was that at home they were expecting, to put on a show. It wasn't the case. They got lucky with the winner, Borna Barisic free kick. But in terms of the actual statistics, as you say, they've matched Celtic's record since returning from the World Cup break. And I think really the only question now is to ask is, should he have been brought in sooner, or should Giovanni Van Bronckhorst have been sacked earlier? And there might be, because I think, to be honest, even the most ardent fan would accept that there isn't a realistic title race. 9-point gap is just too much. Had it been 6, maybe, even then it's a tall order for them. If you look at Celtic's goal difference, you're looking at effectively 10 points. The Celtic team just does not look like losing at all, and that is going to be the other frustrating factor for Michael Beale, is to think, I could barely have done any better, and I'm not eating into that gap at all. It must be eating away at him.
Yeah.
But Celtic are just relentless.
And I know, Gav, that today in Record Sport, you've written a piece on Malik Tillman and his future at Ibrox. He's got 8 goals and 5 assists now. This is his first senior. I believe it's his first senior season as a top footballer.
Yeah.
But he's starting to stand out at Ibrox.
He is, and that's the thing. I mean, another goal at the weekend. There was a spell early on where, fans couldn't quite make up their mind. It's like, there's this £5 million fee, on the option to buy, and it's, in the early sort of months, it was like, even, is it worth it? Could we get better? These were the kind of questions that fans were asking themselves. But I think now it has just moved on now, that debate. It's basically, it's a no-brainer. £5 million, absolutely it's worth it. The question now is, how realistic is it? Michael Beale himself said that really Bayern Munich, even if Rangers agree to pay this fee, they've got the option to buy, but it's Bayern Munich now have a decision to make. will they have changed their thinking? You look at the players they've got at their disposal. Even if he continues to improve, are they going to look at one season in Scotland for Rangers as changing things in terms of where he fits into their squad? I don't know. We have to say it's very unlikely he's going to go in there and be a starter. He did come off the bench a few times from before he came here. The manager spoke very highly of him. So I do think they rate him. It's just, where did they see him? Could he just maybe come off the bench in sort of League Cup games? And if that is the case, is that going to be enough for him? He's 20. He's trying to get into become more of a regular in the USA national team. So when you've had this season, I mean, you look at how much the fans love him. There's a lot to be said for that. And I think it's difficult when you go back, no matter the size of the club, even to go back to becoming a bit part player. I think that's hard for players to accept when you've had that taste for it. So I think it will be really interesting in the summer to see, one, will Rangers, do they definitely want him and are they happy to pay the fee? Two, where do Bayern Munich see him and are they happy to let him go, or will they give him another chance? And three, does he want that chance if it's only going to be 10 minutes here and there, or does he want to go and be a regular?
I think he's stuck at a weird crossroads where obviously Cantwell and Hadji's come back as well. Mm-hmm. So Rangers are, from all of a sudden this season, have just gone from having little creativity under Van Bronckhorst to having now three top quality Scottish Premiership, creative midfielders. I think it'd be hard for him to get in the team next year if Cantwell comes in and Hadji comes back and they fire off exactly the way that people have expected them to. But then you go to Bayern Munich, like you're saying, you've got Jamal Musiala, who was Germany's standout player at the World Cup. He plays exactly the same position as Tillman, and he's only 19. And he's German, so they're going to try and enhance his development more than anyone else's. You've got Mathis Tell. He's like a 17-year-old striker for Bayern, so it's not like they're short of young talent that they need him to come in and fill a quota. And then you've obviously got Gnabry, Sane.
Yeah.
It's a small amount of them.
Is that it? Is that it, Will? Is that all?
So it's just going to be tough for him wherever he goes. And obviously he's had a good year at Rangers, don't get me wrong, but the only way I can see him getting in is maybe if Cantwell moves out to the left and Ryan Kent goes in the summer, and then you've got that one more gap to have the attacking midfield slot. So as good as it is for both clubs, Bayern would get a decent sized fee for a player who's rarely featured for them, and Rangers would get a high potential player. I personally think he's stuck at this weird crossroads of what do I do with my future now, because Rangers brought in Beale, an attacking manager. They've got options galore at attacking midfield, but then he's not going to get into the Bayern team. So it might be that he's kind of gone on tutorial at Rangers to help himself move somewhere else in the summer that's not Bayern or Rangers.
Yeah, and he's firing at one end of the pitch, Daniel, and I think getting Ben Davies and Connor Goldson, this is something that Rangers missed early on. Davies being injured a lot of the time, and then Suter obviously brought in and being injured. Getting, you had James Sands slotting into central defence, but now you can really see a real good central defensive partnership is developing there with Ben Davies and Connor Goldson. So getting it right defensively. And then you finally get the heart of the defence sorted, and then you've got a problem behind them with the goalkeepers chopping and changing, and then John McLaughlin making another error at the weekend. I think that, especially as we build up to this cup final, that's just absolutely huge for Rangers. Well, of course, they want to get their hands on the trophy first and foremost, but as Michael Beale said, they want to try and deny Celtic the chance, of a treble, because if they don't, they can't have, any real confidence that somebody else will. So he needs to sort out that goalkeeper situation. We're only talking that cup final's not going to be long in coming. We've got the Scottish Cup this weekend, and then a league game the following weekend, and then it's all eyes on Hampden. So I think he's going to have to put Al McGregor in and stick with him, going by McLaughlin's performance at the weekend.
And Gav, just to finish on Rangers, the other recruitment dilemma, I think Will touched on it a little bit. It's just Morelos and Kent, two of the most influential players at Ibrox, but both out of contract. I mean, do you think they'll still be there in the summer?
I change my mind every other week when I think about it. First of all, you think, well, do Rangers want to keep them? They always made this point, Ross Wilson and Michael Beale making this point of saying that there were two very separate situations here. I don't know what they quite meant by that. Was it that they wanted to keep one and not the other? Was it that, one had been offered and not back, money, maybe demands were too high? I don't know. Then there was the form of Morelos. I mean, you probably wouldn't have offered him a new deal on the form, and then he goes and, like he can do, he bursts into life, away game against Kilmarnock, he's back to his best, and then at Tynecastle he just thrives on that situation, the pantomime villain, and he's back to he's when pundits start criticising him, he's doing something, whereas before, he was going through that spell where he was almost like just ineffective, and nobody was really commenting on him other than to say he was below par. But when if you take that game against Hearts at Tynecastle midweek, that's what he could do. That was Morelos back to his devilish best. And on that form, you would want him to stay. Kent, you would definitely want him to stay. But I don't know what their thinking is. Morelos, he's been around for a long time now. He might just fancy a change. The other thing is maybe Michael Beale has somebody else in mind. He spoke about having a specific number 9 target who he refused to name because he didn't want to alert other clubs to him. He said he won't be available until the summer. Don't know who that guy is. Maybe he wants him instead of Morelos, or maybe he wants him as well as.
Absolutely. Big summer for Rangers either way. Gav mentioned the Cups there. Looking back to Alex McLeish's time at Rangers, we saw how important winning the Cups if you can't win the league is. Rangers at home to Partick Thistle this weekend, but a few other big ties in the Scottish Cup. Darvel at home to Falkirk. Do you think after overthrowing Aberdeen they can go one further?
I know Falkirk are nowhere near as reputable as Aberdeen, but if it's anything like performance at Aberdeen Park at Darvel, then there's every chance. I think it is a step too far. You see it when, in the FA Cup and stuff, you'll get a League Two team beating a Championship team. You're thinking, oh, wow, look at this. And then they'll go to a team that's slightly worse off, but the magic's just faded away. And I think it'd be unfair to put the expectation on Darvel to get through, as much as I'd want them to do it, because it would be one of the best stories in British football history. But we'll have to see. But I can't really see it. I think all the stars were aligned for that Aberdeen win. Jim Goodwin was on the rocks, like a strong home crowd. But I think it could be one bridge too far, unfortunately.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Will, when you mentioned the FA Cup and that comparison. How often do you see it? Yeah, where a team stuns a big team, and in the next round they get on paper an easier tie, and then they go out. I think you're right. I can see that scenario.
Yeah. It happened this year in England. You had Stevenage went to Aston Villa and won 2-1.
Yeah.
And then they went to Stoke, who were almost bottom of the Championship, and they lost 3-1. So it's like everyone was picking them up for this other away day, and then it's just so anticlimactic.
Yeah. No, I totally get you. But Dan, looking ahead to the Cup, I think one of the ties actually is jumping out. Motherwell are in an absolutely horrendous run of form. Poor Stevie Hamill, you've got to feel for him, but there's nothing falling for him just now, and you have to look at them going to Starks Park. We're seeing shock. Would it be a huge shock? Not in the form that Motherwell are on just now, but certainly the fact it's a Premiership team against lower league opposition. It would be a shock, but that's one to watch out for.
Aye. And elsewhere in the Cup, Celtic are at home to St Mirren. You fancy, obviously, Celtic as big favourites, Gav, but Stephen Robinson, you mentioned him earlier, arguably manager of the year so far, top 6 for St Mirren. What wonders there?
Unbelievable, and as good as it is to get a tie against Rangers Celtic in the Cup, I know the whole argument of being on TV and making yourself a few quid, but when he's in the kind of form that he's on, that St Mirren are on, he must be a bit gutted at seeing that draw, because he would have fancied himself for a run. That's not to say they definitely can't win, but in the form that Celtic are on, it's hard to see it. Partick Thistle, of course, they go to Ibrox on Sunday. They've lost to the bottom 2 teams in the Championship, I think, their last two games, so they won't fancy that. So I think we have to assume it'll be Celtic and Rangers, certainly 2 of the teams in the quarterfinals.
Absolutely. And it's not, for what it's worth. Well, I think Hearts will win the cup. I know it's hard to see by Celtic and Rangers, but definitely the third best team in the country. It'd be good to see Robbie Nielsen get a bit of silverware.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to see like someone else win it for a change as well. I think, like you say, they are definitely the third best team in the country, and the way that Lawrence Shankland's scoring, like the whole team's firing, it would be a bit of a disappointment if they only finished third and didn't get their hands on a bit of silverware. But what is it now, like 11 years since they last won a trophy, something like that?
Must be around that.
It must be the strongest they've been in that time, obviously, going down to the Championship and all that since. So, yeah, it depends on the way that the draw runs, really. If Rangers get each other in the quarters and they get someone Championship team or whatever, and then it's obviously that's one of the big two out of the way, it could be easier for them. But I think your prediction might be a little bit overestimated there. I'd still go Rangers to win it, unfortunately. As much as as good as it'd be for a not smaller side, but someone that isn't them two to win it, you just can't see past them.
Absolutely. Guys, I think that more or less brings us to the end of today's Record Sport Facebook Live. Well, Gav, it's been an absolute pleasure. I should say, for everyone watching, you can get involved in the discussion in the comments section below. And you can also find us at Record_Sport on Twitter and at DailyRecord_Sport on Instagram as well. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Cheers. Thanks, Will.
We'll be back again soon. Cheers.
Have a good day.